Hi kids, welcome back to my channel. We are reading chapters 13 through 15 in part 5 of this book, Little Women. And we have one more part after that with 4 chapters, and this book will be over. I'm going to try to get it out and done before midnight later today so we can start a new book in the new year. So get a drink, get comfy. This is chapter 13. It's called Autumn Secrets, and here we go. The autumn sun lay warmly in the high window. Jo was seated on the old sofa in the attic, writing busily. Her papers spread out before her. She scribbled away till the last page was filled, then signed her name with a fancy flair. She threw down her pen and exclaimed, "There! I've done my best." Jo tied the papers up with a red ribbon. She took another set of papers from the cupboard and put them both in her pocket. Then she crept downstairs. Very quietly, Jo put on her hat and jacket. Going to the back window, she got out on the roof of a low porch. She swung herself down and took a roundabout way to the road. Once there, she halted a passing carriage bus. She looked very merry and mysterious as it rolled away. The bus let her off in town, and after a few long turns, she found the place she was looking for. She went to the doorway and looked up the dirty stairs. After standing still a minute, she suddenly walked away. She went back, stood, and walked away again several times. This greatly amused a black-eyed young gentleman who was watching her from the window of a building across the street. Finally, Jo gave herself a shake, pulled her hat over her eyes, and walked up the stairs. She looked scared and nervous, as if she were going to have her teeth out. There was a dentist sign, among others, at the entrance to the building. The young gentleman stared at the sign for a moment. Then he put on his coat and went down to wait in the doorway. In 10 minutes, Jo came running downstairs with a very red face. When she saw the young gentleman, she looked anything but pleased. He asked, "Did you have a bad time?" "Not very." "How many did you have out?" There she is going in the building. Oops, skip a page. Jo looked at her friend as if she did not understand him, and then began to laugh. He thought she had been to the dentist. "What are you laughing at?" said Laurie. They walked in silence a few minutes. Then Laurie said, "I'd like to tell you something very interesting. It's a secret. If I tell you, you must tell me your secret." Jo thought about this for a moment. Then she whispered, "Well, I've left 2 stories with a newspaper man to see if he'll print them. He will give me the answer next week." "Hooray for Miss March, the famous American author!" cried Laurie. "Your stories are works of Shakespeare compared to half the rubbish that is published every day." Jo's eyes sparkled. "And what's your secret?" "I know where Meg's other glove is." "Is that all?" said Jo, looking disappointed. Meg had left a pair of gloves at the Lawrence's house weeks ago. Only one had ever been found. Laurie nodded with a face full of mystery. "All right, Laurie. Tell then, where's the glove?" Laurie bent and whispered 3 words in Jo's ear. She looked shocked and quite displeased. "Oh, they are gossiping." "How do you know?" Jo said sharply. "Saw it in his pocket. Isn't it romantic?" "No, it's horrid." "Don't you like the secret?" "Of course I don't. The idea of anybody coming to take Meg away. No, thank you." And Jo, rather ungratefully, she tried to hide the trembling of her lips. Lately, she had felt that Meg was getting to be a woman, and Laurie's secret made her dread the separation, which now seemed very near. For a week or 2, Jo behaved so strangely that her sisters were quite bewildered. She rushed to the door when the postman rang. She was rude to Mr. Brooke whenever they met, and she sat looking at Meg with a sad face. 2 weeks later, Jo's secret trip to town, Meg saw Laurie chasing Jo all over the garden. Shrieks of laughter were heard. In a few minutes, Jo bounced into the parlor. She laid herself on the sofa and pretended to read the newspaper. "Anything interesting?" asked Meg. She's waiting for the paper to come to see if her stories were published. "Nothing but a story," returned Joe. "Read it aloud. That will keep you out of mischief," said Amy in her most grown-up tone. "What's the name of the story?" asked Beth, wondering why Joe kept her face behind the paper. "The Rival Painters." "That sounds well. Read it," said Meg. Joe began to read very fast. The girls listened with interest, for the tale was romantic and somewhat sad, but most of the characters died. "Who wrote it?" asked Beth, who had caught a glimpse of Joe's face. The reader suddenly sat up, cast away the paper, and replied in a loud voice, "Your sister." "You?" cried Meg, dropping her work. "It's very good," said Amy critically. "I knew it! Oh my, Joe, I'm so proud!" Beth ran to hug her sister. How delighted they all were, to be sure. How Meg wouldn't believe it till she saw the words, "Miss Josephine March," actually printed in the paper. How kindly Amy remarked on the artistic parts of the story, how Beth skipped and sang with joy, how proud Miss March was when she knew it, how Joe laughed with tears in her eyes. Very proud, first time being published. For a writer, that's a big moment. Joe told of her adventure to see the newspaper man. She explained how she had been waiting all this time to see if one of her stories would be printed. She added, "And when I went to get my answer, he said he liked them both. He doesn't pay beginners, only lets them print in the paper, so I let him have the 2 stories. I shall write more, and he's going to pay me for the next one. I am so happy, for I may be able to support myself and help the girls." Joe's breath came out. Wrapping her head in the paper, she shed a few tears. To earn her own money and earn the praise of those she loved were the dearest wishes of her heart. This seemed to be the first step towards the happy end. Alright, take a break if you need it. I'm just going to keep going. Chapter 14, called The Telegram. "November is so dreary," grumbled Meg as she stood at the window one dull afternoon, looking out at the frostbitten garden. "And nothing pleasant ever happens here." Beth sat at the other window. She said, "2 pleasant things are going to happen right away. Marmee is coming down the street, and Laurie is coming to the garden, as if he had something nice to tell." And they both came. Miss March asked her usual questions. "Any weather from Father, girls?" And Laurie asked, "Won't some of you come for a drive?" "Laurie, will you call at the post office?" asked Miss March, as the girls went off for their coats. "It's our day for a letter." A sharp ring of the doorbell interrupted her. A minute later, Hannah came in with a telegram. Miss March read the 2 lines it contained and dropped back into the chair. It was as if the little paper had sent a bullet to her heart. Joe read aloud in a frightened voice, "Miss March, your husband is really ill. Come at once. South Hale Black Hospital, Washington." How still the writing was as they listened. How strangely the day darkened. How suddenly the whole world seemed to change as the girls gathered about their mother. They felt as if all the happiness and support of their lives was about to be taken from them. Miss March stretched out her arms to her daughters. "I shall go at once," she said. "But it may be too late. Oh, children, help me to bear it." Bad news from the war front. For several minutes there was nothing but the sound of sobbing in the room. They tried to be calm as their mother sat up, looking pale but steady. She put away her grief to think and plan. "Laurie, send a telegram saying I will come at once. The next train goes early in the morning. I'll take that. And please leave a note at Aunt March's. Joe, give me that pen and paper." Joe knew that what her mother was about to do. She would need money for the journey, and she must ask to borrow it from Aunt March. Her mother quickly made a list of errands, and Joe scurried out of the house. Mr. Lawrence hurried over to say how sad he was at the news. He offered to escort Miss March to Washington. Miss March thanked him kindly but would not hear of it. Mr. Lawrence marched off saying he'd be back soon. No one thought of him again until Meg suddenly came upon Mr. Book in the door entry. "I came to offer myself as escort to your mother," he said in a warm, quiet voice. Meg put out her hand. "How kind you are. It will be such a relief to know she has someone to take care of her. Thank you very, very much." Meg's boyfriend is going to escort her. Oh dear. Awkward. Maybe awkward. I heard an awkward hearing things, there's no one there. The short afternoon wore away. Jo had not been seen for hours, when at last she came walking in with a very odd expression. She handed a roll of money to her mother. "That's my part toward making father comfortable and bringing him home." $25, Jo! I hope you haven't done anything rash." "No, I only sold something that was my own." As she spoke, Jo took off her bonnet. Everyone gasped, for her flowing hair was cut short. "Your hair! Your beautiful hair! Oh, Jo, how could you? My dear Grandma, there is no need of this." Jo rumpled her hair, trying to look as if she liked it. "It will do my brains good to have that mop taken off my head. Feels so light and cool." "What made you do it?" asked Amy, who would have cut off her head before cutting her pretty hair. "Well, I was wild to do something for father," replied Jo as she gathered about the table. "I saw the barber shop and I knew what I had to do. The woman there picked out a long lock for me to keep. I'll give it to you, Marmee." Miss March put the wavy chestnut lock away with a short gray one in her desk. She only said, "Thank you, dearie," but something in her face made the girls change the subject. They talked as cheerfully as they could about the happy times they would have when father came home. My eyes twitching, sorry. No one wanted to go to bed that evening. Finally, Miss March put away her sewing and said, "Come, girls." Beth went to the piano and played their father's favorite hymn. All began bravely, but broke down one by one until Beth was left alone, singing with all her heart. She cut off her hair. She sold her hair. Back in the day, that's how they made wigs and stuff. The clocks were striking midnight, and the rooms were very still as a figure guided quietly from bed to bed. It smoothed the cover here, settled the pillow there, looking tenderly at each sleeping face. It kissed each and prayed as only a mother can. Miss March lifted the curtain. The moon came from behind the clouds and shone upon her like a kind face that whispered to her, "Be comforted, dear soul. There is always light beyond the clouds." As they dressed in the cold gray dawn, the sisters agreed to say goodbye cheerfully and send their mother on her journey without tears. The big trunk stood ready in the hall. Mother's cloak and bonnet lay on the sofa. Mother sat, trying to eat, but looking pale and worn. Meg's eyes kept filling with tears. Jo hid her face more than once. The little girls wore troubled expressions. As they waited for the carriage, Miss March said to the girls, "Hope and keep busy. Visit the poor homeless, Meg. Watch over your sisters, and any trouble go to Mr. Lawrence. Be patient, Jo, and be brave, my girl. Beth, comfort yourself with your music and help around the house. And you, Amy, help all you can and keep happy, safe at home." There's Mom saying goodbye to all the girls. She had to leave very, very early. "We will, Mother, we will." The carriage approached with a rattle. That was the hardest minute. No one cried, though their hearts were very heavy. They kissed their mother quietly and clung about her tenderly. Roy and his grandfather came over to see her off. Mr. Book looked so strong and kind that the girls named him Mr. Greatheart on the spot. "Goodbye, my darlings. God bless and keep us all," whispered Miss March. She kissed one dear little face after the other and hurried into the carriage. The girls tried to wave their hands cheerfully as she rolled away. The sun came out. Looking back, she saw it shining in a group at the gate like a good sign. This being said, last chapter for this part 5, I have to check. Chapter 14 is called A Bitter Winter Wind. For a week, everyone seemed in a heavenly frame of mind. Good news about their father comforted the girls very much. Mr. Brooks sent a letter every day, which grew more cheerful as the week passed. At first the girls were very well behaved and serious, but as the news kept getting better, they began to fall back into their own ways. Jo caught a bad cold and was ordered to stay at home till she was better. Amy grew bored with housework and returned to her art. Meg wrote long letters to her mother. Beth visited the Hummels and performed her little duties faithfully each day, and even some of her sisters. They all felt that they had done well and deserved praise, and so they did. But then they stopped doing well and learned a hard lesson. Meg, I wish you'd go and see the Hummels. Your mother told us not to forget them, said Beth. It had been 10 days since Miss March had left. I'm too tired to go this afternoon, replied Meg, rocking comfortably. Can't you, Jo? Asked Beth. Too stormy for me with my cold, said Jo. Why don't you go yourself? Asked Meg. I have been every day, but the baby is sick, and I don't know what to do for it. It gets sicker and sicker. I think you or Hannah ought to go. Meg promised she would go tomorrow, so Beth quietly put on her hood, filled her basket with treats for the poor children, and went out into the chilly air. It was late when she came back. No one saw her creep upstairs and shut herself into her mother's room. Half an hour later, Jo found little Beth looking very ill, her eyes red. What's the matter? Cried Jo. Beth put out her hands as if to warn her off. She whispered quietly, You've had the Scarlet Fever, haven't you, Jo? Was Beth begging Mom to go with them? Years ago. When Meg did. Why? Oh, Jo, Miss Hummel's baby is dead. It died in my lap before she got home. Beth cried with a sob. Oh, my dear girl, how dreadful for you, said Jo. She took her sister in her arms as she sat down. When I got there, Mr. Hummel had gone for a doctor. The baby seemed asleep, but all of a sudden it gave a little cry and trembled, and then lay very still. I knew it was dead. Don't cry, dear. What did you do? I just sat and held it softly till Miss Hummel came with the doctor. He said it was dead and that it was scarlet fever. He told me to go home and take medicine right away, or I'll have it. Oh, Beth, if you should be sick, I never could forgive myself. What shall we do? Cried Jo with a frightened look. She hugged her close. If Mother was only home, she said. You've been with the baby every day for more than a week, so I'm afraid you're going to have it, Beth. I'll call Hannah. She knows all about sickness. Hannah assured them that there was no need to worry. Everyone got scarlet fever, and if rightly treated, nobody died. No. What's Beth? Getting sick. I bet you it's like COVID. Well, or worse than COVID, actually. We will have Dr. Beggs just take a look at you, dear, she said. Then we'll send Amy off so she won't catch the fever. You can stay with Aunt March. One of you girls can stay at home and amuse Beth for a day or two. Amy passionately declared that she'd rather have the fever than go stay with grumpy Aunt March. Meg resigned, pleaded, and commanded, but still Amy refused. Lily walked into the parlor to find Amy sobbing with her head in the sofa cushions. She told her story, but Lily only walked around the room, whistling softly. Now, be a sensible little woman, and do as they say, he urged her gently. Scarlet fever is no joke, miss. I promise I'll come to Aunt March's house and take you out every day. You will come every single day? See if I know. And bring me back the minute, Beth, as well? The very minute. Well, I guess I will go, said Amy slowly. Good girl, call Meg and tell her you've given in. Meg and Jo came running down, and Amy promised to go. There's Lori comforting. She's always the trouble one, isn't she? Amy. What a difficult world this is, said Jo. No sooner do we get out of one trouble than down comes another. I'm lost with Mother gone. I think we ought to tell her if Beth is really ill. But Hannah says Mother can't leave Father, and it will only make him anxious. Worried Meg. Jo, go down and get Mr. Baggs at once. We can't decide anything till he has been. Dr. Baggs came and said Beth had symptoms of the fever, but he thought she would have it lightly, and he was ordered off to Aunt March's house. Oh dear, it's getting very intense. I hope you liked part 5. Gear up, because I'm going to finish the rest of the book tonight. And like I said, so tomorrow, into the new year, we can start a new book, which I think is going to be The Page Master, which is actually a movie that came out when I was young. I'll see you all next time. Be good, and Happy New